Hey everyone, Adam here. Welcome back to another video. In this one, we got another case study video. You guys seem to really like the case study videos. And on this one, we actually got a Snapchat ads case study here. So similar to the Pinterest ads one, we're gonna go through like basically overview of the account structure, like basically exact targeting and everything, overview of the ads, what didn't work too as well, so you guys can kind of take some lessons for yourself there as well too, and some extra details overall. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. So first things first, we'll just go through the numbers and we'll dive into everything else after that. So basically in this one here, we actually started with this brand on Snapchat back in halfway through 2021 or so, around like June, July-ish. But basically this case study will be for last year, all of 2022, just gonna give you a full overview of the year. You know, some people can have amazing months or an amazing day, but I think it's good to actually look at data over, you know, a long time horizon and see the consistency. And, you know, it's not just some platform that just, you know, just does well randomly. It does well over a good amount of time, right? If done correctly, essentially. So you can see here, basically $91,000 in ad spend. This is actually Canadian dollars, and it comes out to $631K in revenue. So right around $500K in US dollars or so, give or take, maybe a touch less or touch over. And basically a really healthy return on ad spend too of 6.92 on the platform. So a very profitable platform that should not be slept on, especially if, you know, your kind of target demographic audience is a bit younger. I'd say it's primarily 18 to 30 for Snapchat. So if your basically target audience for your brand or anything is a bit younger, or even like in the 30s too, but I'd say anything above 40, like, you know, it's not really, there's not gonna be too many people on the platform at that age. Let's just say that. But yeah, essentially you can see here, 91K spent, purchases total was 5,777, which equated out to $631,000 in revenue, which equals a return on ad spend average of 6.92. So very, very nice indeed. So basically what we'll cover, like I was saying, the exact account structure, you know, exact targeting, what was tested that didn't work, you know, overview of the ads, and also some extra details. So basically first things first, we'll get into the campaign structuring and kind of see what that looks like. So basically here's kind of a snapshot of all the campaigns here. You can see here different spends, different purchases, revenue, and all that kind of stuff. And essentially it does look like a lot of different things. We did test out a lot of different things. And basically how that's kind of structured, you see here, once again, it's kind of the US and Canada. And then basically you can see here, it's basically cold or hot. Cold is basically people have never heard of, you know, the brand before, and that's where vast majority of the spend goes. And then basically hot is basically when they've already been to the site, you know, they've added a cart, they've initiated checkout, et cetera, et cetera. And just kind of give you an overview, just to kind of give a bit more of a visual look to it. I pulled up this chart here, that way you can kind of see here how we set up the promo period, basically promo campaigns, and also the evergreen account structure. So if we look into it, so we zoom into the US here, essentially what we have, very simple, we just have prospecting, and then we have retargeting. By the way, this is what's run right now currently. So right now we have a reach lookalike on terms of prospecting. It's literally just one audience, very, very simple. I'll get to in a moment exactly how to create that, what we've tested, and all that kind of stuff. And then retargeting is actually 3 ad sets. We split it out with view content, how many days, add to cart, how many days, and then initiate checkout, how many days. Now, you know, we've split tested like so many different things in terms of retargeting. We've done, you know, the 7 days, and then, you know, there's a 7 to 14 day window. We got another set of ads, and there's like 14 to 30, and there's another set of ads. You know, we've done like 60 days, we've done 90 days, we've done 180, but really at the end of the day, this is honestly what's done best for us. It's most consistent, it's the most profitable. So take what you will from it, but honestly this is what's worked best for us from all of our testing across numerous industries and you know, numerous different niches in the e-commerce niche, and yeah, this is honestly what we've seen work best. And now in terms of Canada, very similar. The only thing different is that we actually went for broad, which worked best in terms of prospecting. I'll get to what we tried elsewhere, but honestly broad, and you'd be surprised how simple it is. And then retargeting, very similar setup to the US, where we have the 3 ad sets. Now in the US, because it is a little bit less of a budget, we actually only had 2 ads per ad set, and then for this one we had 4 for each one. So view content would have 4 ads, add to cart would have 4 ads, initiate checkout would have 4 ads, and they're primarily video ads, and then they basically have a discount code on them as well too, which I'll get to in a bit about the details on that. Now in terms of the promo period, so let's just say Easter, you know, Valentine's Day, Black Friday, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. This is basically how we'd set it up, because we're primarily targeting the 2 countries. It'd be one, you know, basically Canada and US. US, we basically have prospecting and retargeting. And then for Canada, we'd have prospecting, retargeting. Now, because we're actually doing numerous different platforms, and, you know, a lot of the spend is going towards, for this brand, Meta, compared to, you know, Snapchat and Pinterest. You know, they also have another company helping out with Google, essentially in this case. But yeah, essentially, you know, sometimes we won't really even set up retargeting. You'll see in a moment. We just end up doing prospecting in terms of the promo period. So hopefully that clears it up, and makes it a bit more kind of simple, and rather than just a bunch of campaigns spread out everywhere. Just that's basically honestly how simple it is. So, and then you can see here for the promo campaign, for Black Friday, this is kind of what it looked like. What we do is we set a lifetime budget compared to a daily budget. We find that it works way better at scale, compared to just doing a daily budget. So that's the one thing we'll change, because it's just gonna be set like week or two time frame, and then we just set a lifetime budget for it. In this case, we actually just did cold traffic, performed quite well. And you can see here for Canada, we actually just literally just did broad, 19 plus, all genders, like very, very, very simple. And you can see here it did quite well to see. In terms of retargeting, this is basically what it looks like on the inside. So very similar to what I kind of broke down earlier. One ad set for view content, one for add to cart, one for initiate checkout. In the US, we had 2 ads per ad set. And then essentially you can see here the audiences. You just got to go to custom audiences, create the custom audience. We like to do add to cart for 180 days, view content 180 days, and we also did a separate one for initiate checkout 100 days, which currently is paused right now, just underperforming compared to these two so far. I think in 2023 so far. Canada Hot. Very simple, literally exact same thing. The only difference is we actually just had 4 ads per ad set instead of 2, because you can see here basically the amount spent was basically essentially, you know, a bit higher. In Canada, there's more traffic, so we basically just want to have more ads per ad set because, you know, spend was a bit higher in that country. Now, in terms of prospecting, currently this is what's on there right now. We have broad currently at $60 a day, sometimes a bit lower, sometimes a lot higher. Right now we kind of scaled back a little bit in January. Kind of just want to focus on higher ROAS for now across the platforms, and, you know, big amount of budget. Yeah, it's really going to Meta right now. And essentially audiences here, literally it's that simple. Like there's literally nothing there, and basically just have an expand audience automatically, which is interesting. You'll find that like just with Snapchat, it's just broader the better, from lookalikes to basically how we do this. It's just because I'll show you in a bit what we tested, and it just honestly just underperformed compared to just going broad, which is interesting. That it's just so simple, but it literally just works really well. Now in terms of the US, broad actually didn't perform as well, and we actually tried different things. We tried different lookalikes, but what we found worked best is actually reach purchase lookalike. Now, in basically what that means is, like, in terms of the types of lookalikes, there's actually 3 for Snapchat, how they have it categorized. So similarity is actually like kind of the closer profile match to your users with less scale. So because we did a purchase lookalike, we're basically taking the seed audience, essentially in this case, is everyone who's purchased from the brand tracked on Snapchat in the last 180 days, and then just making an audience that looks like those 180 people that purchased in the last 180 days. And yeah, and basically based off what you select, it's just gonna be way more similar. So it's gonna be a smaller audience pool. Balance is gonna be kind of a bit more matched, a bit more scale, but then reach is just like way larger audience, essentially. Yeah, essentially based off that seed audience there. So hopefully that makes sense. And we split tested different ones. We've gone to split tested similarity compared to reach and balanced, and we actually find reach honestly does the best. So similar to how broad in just in Canada just did really well, reach for purchases ended up doing really well too. Now, if you don't have enough data, enough purchases, I would recommend to go lower in the funnel in terms of like doing it off of add to cart, or even view content. So basically just people have actually been to a product page. So that's what I recommend. But obviously for this brand, we have more than enough data just to use purchase. So something to note there. But yeah, you can see the difference in terms of return ad spend. You can see here, reach US looked like during the same time period. I forget which time period this was when I took this snapshot. I think it's recent actually. Might have been this year to date or so in 2023. But you can see your 8.74 ROAS compared to 1.29. So big difference in terms of profitability. So yeah, give that a test on your end here. And I'll show you here how to set it up too as well. So in terms of how to set it up, basically what you do is you go to the top left bar, you're going to click on manage ads, and then it's going to open up a full thing. And then basically what you want to do is go to the audience library, and then basically hit new audience. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get to here, and what you want to click on is a lookalike audience on here. And then once you select your lookalike audience, you want to click your seed audience. Like I was saying, if you have a lot of data, just go purchase. It's going to be strongest data. It's going to make the audience look like people who are already buyers, which is the strongest. But once again, comes down to split testing. Maybe add to cart, even though it's not the perfect seed audience, it might have way more data Meta. Instead of having, 100 purchases, you might have 1,000 or 2,000 add to carters, right? So sometimes, that might actually be stronger because it has more data, essentially, and they're still, pretty far down the funnel. Choose your audience, and then basically the lookalike type, that's basically where you'd select this part here. You'd select either similarity, balance, and reach. Once again, test it out yourself, see what you find work best. This is basically what we found work best in terms of this brand and everything, and then you basically just name it however you want, essentially. So pretty simple. Now, in terms of ads, primarily video ads for this brand, just across the board, every platform literally just does the best, and that's basically what we had for cold traffic. And then basically videos that perform well on Meta, kind of simple product demo videos, did really well. UGC style videos, and what I mean by that is basically, kind of like, customer or creator kind of just be like, hey, look at me with my product, and kind of just reviewing it essentially, or an unboxing video, hey, look what came in the mail, just kind of unboxing it. Those kind of videos did do well. We also used our whitelist videos from #paid on this brand, and that killed it on Snapchat. So I'll show you what that mean by that. So if you haven't heard of #paid, it's basically a software where you can essentially like source creators and then basically do creator whitelisting with them. It just makes it very, you can honestly do it by yourself. You don't need to use the platform. I'm not affiliated with them by any means, but it is a little bit pricey. I'd use it more so when you're like really scaling up, but it does increase your profit, like without a doubt. We actually did a split test in terms of basically just literally the exact same ad, exact same audience, everything. And the only difference, instead of having the brand, so instead of having, let's just say Nike there, it just says Catherine, it literally was 2.3 times more profitable. And we're talking like numerous different audiences and campaigns. And so it's a big difference. It actually, it does make a huge difference. But yeah, anyways, we use basically these videos that we got from #paid on Snapchat, and that absolutely killed it. Something to note, if you're really scaling up, you got a bigger budget, might want to look into something like that, because yeah, it makes a big difference for sure. And then basically a mix of photo and video ads for retargeting, honestly, mostly videos. But for this one and for this brand, what we find works best is offering a small discount code in terms of the creatives. So that actually did really well too. So kind of split test it. If you're a bit more of a premium brand, you don't have to by any means do a discount code. You can just do, some sort of review ad, or kind of like a reminder, maybe a bit more of a Q&A, question and answer type ad, etc., etc. So there's different things and different ways you can kind of go about it in terms of the retargeting, but that's kind of what we found worked best for that brand. Now, basically what was tested that didn't work, so that way you can see, kind of take some lessons essentially, and see that there's a lot of testing that goes in behind the scenes. Broad cold traffic in the US did not do well, so that's kind of something to note. Did really well in Canada, didn't do well in the US, so kind of something to note there. So we tried to use the predefined audiences section. This is where it's almost like, kind of on like on Meta, you have like technically like interests essentially. On Pinterest, you basically have your keywords and interests, so very similar to that on Snapchat. Basically that's how they kind of describe it. Didn't really do too well, which is kind of interesting. So kind of something to note there. And yeah, maybe it definitely test it out for your brand and see how it does, but in this case didn't do well at all. So either broad or reach lookalike tended to perform best on this on cold traffic for this brand. We also have this quiz kind of landing page essentially that we set up, where it basically kind of asks some kind of questions and then basically recommends products based off that. Sending traffic to the quiz in the US didn't really do too well. Using a similarity lookalike in the US didn't really do too well. So remember on the spectrum where similarity was a smaller audience, very closer to the seed audience, and then reach was a larger audience, like the similarity didn't really do too well, which is interesting. So only reach lookalikes did well for the brand, and big difference. So definitely worth split testing. Not saying it's not going to work at all, but in this case this is basically what we found to be best. And then basically tried a different product line in a different campaign that didn't do too well. A lot of the TikTok style ads didn't perform too well too, with like the voiceover and all kind of stuff. So kind of something to note there. And then basically some extra details: how long to leave campaigns running when testing. I would say at least 7 days, then look at it. The data does come in decently quick, kind of like Meta. Pinterest, I'd say you gotta wait, give it time for sure, but I would say it's good to let it run for like at least like 5 to 7 days, and then look at it. How much to scale? I would say scale by about 20% each day. That's probably like kind of like a typical amount that you'd want to kind of scale by essentially. How much spend on prospecting versus retargeting? Typically what we do is about a 70 to 30 split. Sometimes we'll do 80-20 or so, but 70 to 30 is kind of like the best from what we've seen in terms of the structure, in terms of growing the brand consistently and reaching a lot of new eyeballs, and then kind of making sure that we're kind of retargeting those new eyeballs, and then basically make sure to use audience insights to gather key info on your audience. So basically what that looks like is if you actually click on the top left bar and then open it all up, you have a spot here to go to audience insights, and then from here it actually gives you a lot of data that you can use not only for Snapchat but also cross-platform, maybe for your Pinterest advertising, for your Meta advertising, Google, etc., or just your organic, etc. But you can see here basically on the overview, it literally tells you who they are, basically the breakdown, male, female, typical age, typical income. They got a lot of data here, top states, top cities, etc. You can see demographics, male compared to female, the age range, the exact percentages on that, English compared to like Spanish and all that. You got locations, so it breaks it all down for you, which states like mostly, purchase from you, all that kind of stuff. They break down the interests in terms of like shoppers, gamers, sports fans, were like essentially the top three. And you could even break it down even further, expand it, and you can see all the extra details, which is, super interesting for each one. So a lot of data they can kind of use for your Snapchat advertising or, anything, essentially other platforms as well too. And you can see your devices, not, some of this data probably won't be too useful, but yeah, they break it all down there for you. Content, some of the top publishers, which is interesting, SportsCenter, NFL Extra Point, Riz Reacts, stuff like that, Discovery Feed, friend stories. So, and then last one here, filters and lenses. So a lot of data that you can gather from that, take what you will from it, but yeah, there's a lot of data that you can kind of use for, basically kind of help extra to use kind of for your to your advantage across the different platforms in terms of the advertising. So yeah, essentially that wraps up the video. Any questions on that, just go ahead and drop them down below in the comments. I'll get back to them when I can. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.